B-A-T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. Joining us once again is Kim Chandler. Kim is the elementary principal at Marsville Bible School and is a 4-year cancer survivor. We will continue to discuss her journey with breast cancer on this episode, and we'll get right to the interview after these messages.
This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by the 3rd annual Bella's Snowball 5K and 1 Mile Fun Run on Saturday, November 12th at 8 a.m. during the host of Christmas Past weekend in Fayetteville, Tennessee. November is National Adoption Awareness Month, and proceeds from this race will help Luke and Heidi Eakes with their adoption travel expenses and support the mission of Always Endure. This event is fun for the whole family. Meeting Queen Elsa, face painting, bubble zone, and candy are just a few things to look forward to. We want to see everyone dressed up. Ruffled shirt, tutu, tights, something with a little Christmas flair. What will you wear to the ball? To register, go to alwaysendure.com and click the Events tab. Thank you for helping to remove a financial barrier so a child can gain their forever home. I'm Travis Creasy. That's All-Pro Ben Hayes.
How's it going? Good to be with you again.
All right. And, of course, as mentioned previously, our guest is Mrs. Kim Chandler, Mars Hill Elementary principal, and Ben Hayes' boss.
Yes,
back with us.
one of my many bosses. So, we're excited to have you back on the show with us again.
I'm excited to be back on the show again.
Well, we had a really good time last time talking to you about a tough topic. So we had fun, but we were talking about a pretty tough topic that unfortunately a lot of people have to deal with, and you've had to deal with, and that is breast cancer. And you are now, where we said earlier, a 4-year cancer survivor. So diagnosis was in 2018.
Yes.
Rang the bell in 2019,
Yes.
I believe. And so you've kind of been living this journey for a while, almost done with the treatments. Is that
Almost,
correct?
yes.
So
One
when
more
will that
year.
last treatment be, thereabout?
I have 1 more year on the medication.
Okay, 1 more year on medication. So that's really awesome. You shared with us last time some myths that sometimes people hear. Sometimes those myths, I guess, maybe make people feel better, like thinking, okay, well, this can't be me because... but you said that there's probably some other myths that maybe we need to know about that we haven't talked about.
Absolutely. There's at least one that I left out that I think is really important. And I did fall for several of those myths, thinking that breast cancer was something that I never had to worry about because of those things. And I was wrong about that. But so for a female, early on, it's very important to know how to correctly do a self-exam and to do it monthly and to know the best time to do it, each month. So you really need to talk to your doctor, and you need to know what you're doing and what you're looking for. I started out early on pretty good at doing that and keeping up with it. And I mentioned I had a condition called fibrocystic breast, and so it was really hard for me to know what I was feeling when I would do the breast exam, and if that's something that had been there or hadn't been there that I needed to talk to the doctor about. So one of the myths is that you can always feel that lump, and you cannot, because I felt many different cysts over the years that were just a cyst that needed to be drained. But the actual breast cancer, I did not feel.
Wow.
And I mentioned last time it was the 3D mammography machine that found that, and I'm so thankful for that. But I beat myself up, and I felt so bad because I had gotten so bad at doing those breast self-exams. And my surgeon told me, he said, stop that. Do not feel bad. He said, I know where it's at, and I can't feel it. So...
Wow.
The myth is that you can feel it, and you cannot always feel it. So it is important to do those self-exams, but it is also very important to keep up with those mammograms on a yearly basis.
So a lot of people, I'm sure, have felt it and have gone to the doctor because of it, but don't just trust that.
Yes.
There's times when, there may be, it may be and it may not be, but there's always a need to have extra examinations done? Is it every year? Is that what is kind of the recommendation?
Yes, every year. They want to do those earlier, and they want to do those more often sometimes. Insurance and all that comes into play with some things, and it shouldn't, but it does. But if you have a family history of something, and mine was the fibrocystic breast, and that's the reason they started mine early and kept up with those throughout the time. And I'm so thankful that they did do that for me.
Absolutely. Well, that's good to know. But like you said, sometimes people feel better about it's not anything, and I can be that way about other health issues.
Absolutely.
I think it's probably this or it's probably that, but it's not a bad idea to get checked by someone else.
Always go get it checked out.
Falls on me to ask the Friday refresh question of the day. And so I'm going to ask you, can you tell us more about maybe the after effects of surgery and treatment? And is there a way that, if you know somebody who's going through those things, that they can come and alleviate some of those? I think obviously after having surgery or treatments, there's things that you don't want to do. You just mentioned about, having a baby or having the flu and going home and doing all this other stuff. Are there things that people did for you that helped alleviate some of those chores that you might not feel up to doing? But so the question is there a way? What are the after effects after surgery or treatment? And then are there ways that somebody might can assist or help you kind of take care of the things that you could have, but the effects maybe limit you in that?
Right. So I had a very good support system. I mentioned that on the last one. My family and my work family, my family, they were there for me all the time. They were willing to do anything and everything, and lots of times they knew what I needed when I didn't know what I needed, and that was very good. They made sure that we had food to eat and that clothes were washed and the house was clean, and there was lots of pain involved after surgery, and so much of that. I'm just. I can handle a lot. I can handle a lot of pain and everything, but that pain, it got to me. It really did. And the thoughts of having to go back to those early doctor's visits and get checked and everything just would send me to a bad place sometimes. I just did not want to do that. So, my family made sure, Kevin made sure that I got to every doctor's appointment and got rechecked on everything that I needed to get checked on, and that was a hard time because I constantly felt like I was in a doctor's office, and I was being poked and prodded, and and it hurt, and I didn't want to be poked and prodded anymore. I didn't want anybody else to to touch me or anything like that, and so the pain was it was a for real kind of pain, and I would take my pain medicine as I was supposed to and everything. So I kept it. It was okay, and I was really good. I didn't do things that I knew I wasn't supposed to do, like lift over a certain or move around too much there for a while. But I'm going to tell you, when I sat down on that table in the doctor's office and they did an exam, for like the first year, every time they touched me, I wanted to come off that table and, maybe punch them in the face because it really hurt. So, I was like at 100 at that point. Yeah. Another after effect, mentally for me, I couldn't talk about it. Well, and that was an after effect of the actual diagnosis, So I talked about last time the fog that just kind of came down and enveloped me and just kind of protected me throughout. I could not say the word cancer. I don't think I said the word cancer for at least a year, if not even more. At the night of the diagnosis, Kevin had to talk with both of our kids and tell them. He had to tell our parents and our families. I couldn't do it, and I waited as long as I could to actually talk about it here at school with all of my faculty, to let them, but I had to, right? I had to say, hey, I'm going to be out for just a little while. I've got, have this surgery. And if I remember correctly, I just would tell people, well, I had my mammogram and they found the spot, and that's all I could say about it. I couldn't talk about it. And after, I really couldn't talk about it. So it was really good when those people came to visit or, came by to help with something, that they were willing to just listen if I needed to talk about something, or just sit in silence with me, just be there, it was really good. But now I can talk about it.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that I can talk about it now. And now I just want everybody to know how important it is to do your monthly self-exams and get those yearly mammograms once you get of the age that you need to be doing those, and have a very close relationship with your doctor where you can talk about everything you need to talk about. Don't be afraid to ask any questions, ever. No dumb questions.
As you think about the after effects, not just the physical after effects, but were there some after effects to mental health that you had that you really recognize, or maybe aside from just your story, maybe other people?
Absolutely. So it sounds strange, and I talked on the last podcast about getting to ring that bell in March, and when my daughter saw the picture, she said, "Were you crying when you?" And I said, "I absolutely was crying. And it wasn't necessarily tears of joy. I mean, I was so thankful that I was getting to ring that bell, but at the same time, I was so sad." And I'm like, "What is wrong with you? Why are you so sad? You're ringing the bell. It's, the treatments are over." And it was relationships. It was, I mentioned that I stayed here. I did all my treatment here. I felt very confident and comfortable with all of my doctors. They had wonderful nurses. They had wonderful staff and technicians that worked with me. And so after surgery, and after all of that healing, when I started my radiation, I was very blessed that I was able to do my radiation one treatment all the way to the end with just the weekends off. I didn't burn. I didn't have to stop at any time. So I went every day to the same place at the same time, and I talked to the same people, and they checked on me and made sure everything was okay. But even in the waiting room, when Kevin and I would be there, we met people that we didn't know and heard their stories. And we also reconnected with people that we did know. There was a friend there that we went to church with years and years and years ago when we were growing up, and hers was so much worse than mine, And then there was another gentleman there that was going through some radiation treatments for a cancer, and he was there every day. So I saw the same people every day, and I just felt so connected to them that when I rang that bell that day, the thought that went through my head was, what do I do now? Like, I don't come back here tomorrow, I go home. And how is that going to be? And, I mentioned that, the thought of going to the doctor, would just take me to a dark place. And I think people are afraid to talk about mental health because there is a stigma in our society with mental health. It's a real thing, and I feel that sometimes the people who need the most help don't talk about it because they're so afraid, of what others will think or say, or the judgments, that come out. But you just have to overcome that. You have to get past that, and you have to reach out and you have to ask for help. And like I said, I had some wonderful, wonderful doctors, and one of them even mentioned to me at some point, and I'm like, I've thought about that before, but I just kind of ignored it. He threw out PTSD, and I'm like, before I have said, I kind of sort of feel like a person who may have this, but then in my mind, that's something that people who have gone through something so much worse than me would have, our soldiers who have seen, so many things in battle and everything. So I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that I might have PTSD, over all of this. But I mentioned on the last podcast the phone call from the nurse when, she asked me to come in and she asked me to bring Kevin with me. That just kind of triggered some things that had happened in my past where that phone call came. You know, I lost a nephew in a wreck, and there was that phone call that I got, and I lost my dad when I was 5, and there were some phone calls, you know, that happened around that time. And so it literally got to the point where every time the phone would ring, I was a nervous wreck.
Stress.
You know, I was so stressed. And my daughter would say, "Why do you sound so worried every time you answer the phone?" And I'm like, I don't know, do I sound worried, you know? But I did, because I was expecting every time anybody called me for it to be bad news, you know. So that phone call kind of triggered all of that and took me back to some memories from earlier in childhood that were resurfacing. And so
We've talked about that some on the podcast before, but our brain doesn't have the ability to differentiate between similar and same. So when something that is very similar traumatically, you know, people talk about a way a certain person was dressed or going into a gas station. I had a person that was a friend of mine, wasn't a client of mine, but a friend that had been in, overseas. And he had several post-traumatic episodes. He had one in a gas station because he was in a gas station with a lot of people, happened to be in that gas station that looked like people who were in Afghanistan.
Right.
And he reached into his pocket and grabbed his weapon, thinking, I'm about to have to fight my way out of here. And it was his, he didn't do it intentionally. It wasn't a hate thing. It was just his mind went there. And then the other time he was on the interstate and trucks blocked him in. And he said that's what they would do overseas when they were going to attack you, is they would and he broke down in the middle of the interstate. So your brain doesn't have the ability to differentiate. So that phone rings, you've had too many things that were connected to a phone ringing. Your brain started going to that point rather than, well, as Travis says, be where your feet are.
I don't even think I realized that, because like I said, I would really, you know, I'm worried. So many things would happen, and I didn't even realize, but I think I had survivor's guilt as well. So about a year or two after, when the new cancer center opened, you know, down the road, I got this postcard in the mail that on this certain day they were having like a drive-through parade for all the cancer, you know, fighters and survivors, and, you know, come through and get your t-shirt and, you know, talk to us for just a minute. And so I thought, I'm going to go, you know, I'm going to pull through and go down there and just thank them, you know, for everything that they did for me and everything. And so I pulled through, and the very first lady that I get to, she goes, "Oh," she said, "you look so pretty." She said, "Your hair is so pretty." She said, "Did you lose it?" And I just started crying. And she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I said, No, it's fine. "No, I didn't lose my hair." I said, "I know some people do, but I didn't." And I'm just crying. And I'm like, why am I crying? You know, and it was because I was thinking, you know, there are people that had it so much worse than me, you know. And she's like, "Oh, don't cry because you didn't lose your hair. You know, everybody's story in cancer is different, you know," and all of that. And, you know, we know that stress and your mental health can also affect your physical health, you know. So I was having some random pains and stuff. And so I went to my family doctor, and I'm telling him all of this. And he's putting it together. And he's the one that mentioned, you know, the PTSD and all of that. And I told him, I said, you know, I'm not sleeping, and, you know, I had this pain here, and, you know, and I told him about the phone calls and everything. And so he said, "Tell you what," he said, "I'm going to give you something to just kind of help you relax and be calm." And he said, "It's okay, you know, low dose." He said, "No shame in that whatsoever." Good stuff. So, you know, I took it. I had my prescription filled, and I even started with halving my pill, you know, so I was taking like half of what he, you know, had prescribed for me, even though he told me he was giving me the lowest dose. But once that got in my system, and it helped me, and, you know, I could calm down, and I could see things, you know, clearer, and I could think things through and everything, you know. And then I came off of that. And so I feel like I'm more calm, you know. I'm calmer today. and everything.
And it's not
and
that
I
she
can-
was ever not calm to us, but maybe to you.
Often.
So I kind of hear a few things in there. One, don't be careful about comparing yourself to other people's stories.
Absolutely.
One, everybody's story is different.
Yes.
Then two, don't be afraid to talk to people about it.
Right.
So, whether that's your doctor or family members or whoever else, if you're having some of those thoughts, talk to some people. But also don't be afraid to take something. I think there are some
Absolutely.
people who go, I don't want to take medicine, I don't need to do that. Sometimes you need it.
Yeah, you
and
do,
sometimes
and it's
important.
okay.
Yeah.
And it can get you through what you need to get through at the time, so you can heal
Yeah.
physically and mentally, and then
And a lot of people can get off of it after
Mm-hmm.
a while.
I think
Sometimes
you can
can't.
say when God gives the command to subdue the earth, it's using all the good things that come from
There
the
are
earth
some things,
to
yeah.
help you cope with whatever's going on in a healthy way. And that's certainly a healthy way. And I was given a lot of that stuff in the hospital to get me to calm down so I could sleep.
So this is kind of maybe a little bit more of a personal question, but I feel like it's one that I've heard people comment about. I know that with some women, breast cancer has a big effect because there's at least some identity wrapped up in womanhood
Yes.
and the way you look and physically. So do you want to address that? Is that something that you can address towards,
Yes,
for women
absolutely.
about how do you manage that when you get this diagnosis? Because some people, you had lumpectomy, some people have mastectomy, some people have double mastectomies. So I know that's probably different for everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
how can one manage that?
Well, yes, it is different for everyone, and I could have chosen a mastectomy. That was an option for me. And actually, the surgeon and I we had a deal. So the deal was this: you've said, and my other doctor has said that lumpectomy followed by the radiation and the medicine is the best course of action. That's what you would recommend to your mom, and that's what I've decided. But they also told me, of course, they had to prepare me for when we go in, we don't know what we might find, Thankfully, when they went in, lymph nodes were clear, and the area that he took out when they tested it was all clear and everything. So that was great. And then I was able to get some genetic testing done as well, because I wasn't over 50, I was under 50 at the time. And to see, the possibility of my daughter having it, or the reoccurrence in me as well. And so that was all wonderful. And so I did not think I was strong enough to do a mastectomy. And they recommended the lumpectomy, and Kevin and I talked about it. And so my deal that I made with my surgeon was this: if you get in there and it's worse than what you think, take them.
Just go ahead.
Just go
Yeah.
ahead. The mastectomy will be, if I wake up and that's what I wake up to, I will be prepared for that, because I don't want to go through this again. From the day of my diagnosis until the day of my surgery, so from New Year's Eve 18 to January 19, that's a very short amount of time to make all these big decisions. Yeah. So you have to trust your doctors, and you have to have faith in your God that He is going to take care of you and that you are making the right decision. And so I just want to have all my bases covered. Mm-hmm. This is my plan. But when you get in there and you notice, or you see, then this is plan B.
Sure.
Thankfully, plan A is what happened, and so I was all good with that. I did not think I was strong enough to have a mastectomy, because then you have to decide: am I going to do reconstructive surgery, or am I just going to be fine like I am? And at the time, I was in my mind still young. I'm 48, and I'm thinking I would want to have the reconstructive surgery, and Kevin is wonderful. He is very supportive. It's just whatever you want, it's going to be fine. Whatever you want to do, I'm behind you. You do what you want to do. So my surgeon was so good that the first time I went back to the doctor to have a mammogram after my surgery, they didn't believe me when I told them it was my left breast that they needed to image that day because they couldn't see the scar.
Wow.
And I promise you, I know, I've been through this. I know which one it is, you know. And so I have a very light, small scar. There is some for people with radiation, and everybody's different, you know, but, you know, there's going to be some discoloration and depending on how much tissue they take out, some disfiguration there. And now the scar that I have under my arm is a little bigger, and it is a little discolored from the radiation, and that will bother me from time to time. But you know, I also have a scar that's up and down because I had an emergency C-section one time. Gotcha. And but maybe I'm just at the point in my life where like I can celebrate those things. You know, good things came from
Victories.
those scars.
Yeah.
Victories came from those scars, and they don't bother me.
The devil hates that. You know, he has to hate it. He hates the testimony of something that was meant to hurt your relationship with God, that you then turn around and respond with praise and helping others. He's got to hate that. He has to hate that.
It all goes back to your support system and just, you know, being able to talk to people.
Well, something I would say to maybe people who, and I said this to somebody yesterday, not about this particular topic, but sometimes I went to a conference years ago and the guy was saying this, and I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. You know, I deal with people who are struggling with bipolar, or they're struggling with PTSD, or they're struggling with something else, and it's important to make, and you might say cancer, it's important to make the differentiation between, I've used that word twice today, it's weird, between the fact,
$10 word.
Yeah, but between what I am and what I have. Like, I'm not, you know, someone is not bipolar. They have bipolar. They're struggling with it. Someone is not cancer, and I don't know that many times we go, I'm cancer. But sometimes there's that identity, you know, if somebody has to take a breast, or if somebody has to even have an arm removed, or something that, you know, a lot of times there's identity with that. Well, you know, I've lost this part of me. You lost a limb, or you lost a part, but you didn't lose who you are. Right. And so he would have patients go through, I have a hand, but I'm not a hand. I have a foot, but I'm not a foot. You know, and so those pieces of your body, no matter which ones they are, do not define you. And, you know, understanding that part of it mentally, just like if you have a diagnosis of something, it's not who you are. It's just something that you happen to be struggling with.
Well, I did want to say we've had a lot of people start sharing the episodes, and I guess maybe it's just because that we ask them to. So we're going to keep doing that because you're giving us what we want. And so, you know, be sure to share, like, whatever platform you're on, to let us know you appreciate what we're doing. And also, the tremendous information that's shared, I think, just can help anybody. If you don't have somebody who's been impacted by cancer and even breast cancer, you know, the chances are, and the percentages say you will. So, you know, put it in your back pocket or share it, and maybe somebody else can find it that will help somebody along as well. And then, you know, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, whatever it is, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. We sure do appreciate it. It helps us out. But Mrs. Chandler, thank you for being with us again and taking the time to be with us.
Thank you for letting me.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.